Plagueis fell silent for a long moment, then said, "You need now to hear about the first mission I performed for Darth Tenebrous. The events transpired some 25 years into my apprenticeship. At the time, Tenebrous had sought to expand his network of influential beings by reaching out to a human industrialist named Kerred Santhe, the former owner of Santhe Corporation." "The same," Plagueis said. "Santhe Corporation had been designing freight vessels for generations, but had only limited success with its line of personal starships. My master believed that he might entice Kerred into an alliance by offering him exclusive rights to a Rugus gnome ship. Santhe leapt at the opportunity, but only to manipulate Tenebrous into a situation where agents of Santhe security were able to steal the plans." Plagueis paused in narrow-eyed reflection. It was one of the few times I saw my master outmaneuvered. But he didn't set his sights on revenge. Not immediately, at any rate. Once in production, the starship met with such success that Kerred Santhe was able to acquire a controlling interest in Sinar Technologies and Republic Sinar Systems. Only by agreeing to an arranged marriage between his youngest daughter was Sinar's president, Naro, able to retain his position as chief designer. By then, though, Naro had entered into a secret partnership with Tenebrous, and the time had come to settle scores. Plagueis moved as he spoke. Damask Holdings was in its infancy, but I had already earned a reputation among the galaxy's elite, and so received an invitation to attend a design conference on Coralag, which was then headquarters not only for Sinar Technologies, but for Ether Hypernautics, Dante Artifice, and a dozen other corporations. The guest speaker was the senator representing the Bormia sector, and many luminaries from Coruscant, Corellia, and Kuat attended. From distant Liana came Kerred Santhe and his young and unhappy wife, supported by an entourage of retainers and Santhe security guards. I was seated at a table directly across from him, and the menu specialty that night was bloat eel. Have you ever tasted it, Sidious? As a teenager, at a gala hosted by House Palpatine. Then you know that the creature is one of the most poisonous to be found in the galaxy. The preparation is both dangerous and exacting, as the creature must be skinned while alive to guard against its toxins infiltrating the flesh. Needless to say, nothing enlivens a banquet like the prospect of near-instant death, and the hall could barely contain the anticipation as individual portions were served. I waited to act until I saw Santhe chewing his first bite. Plagueis brought the thumb and forefinger of his left hand close together, and Sidious, taken by surprise, felt his throat close. He gasped for breath. Yes, just so you have an understanding of what Santhe must have felt. Plagueis opened his fingers, and Sidious inhaled deeply, his face flushed, and his hands stroking his throat. Only then I kept the pressure on until his face began to turn red. His hands flew to his throat. His muted calls for help brought everyone around him out of their chairs. I think his bulging eyes might have found mine when I finally pinched his trachea closed completely. Of course, medtechs had been standing by in the event of just such an emergency. Ithorians, if I recall correctly, armed with doses of antitoxin and medicines to counter the effects of anaphylactic shock. But none did the trick that night, for the dark side of the Force had Santhe in its grip, and no drug or resuscitation technique was equal to the task of keeping him alive. Plagueis touched his chin. Many alleged that Rugus Gnome and Naro Sinar had somehow engineered an assassination. Others that Malkite poisoners or a sect of Geno Harridan had been contracted to carry out the kill. But in the end, the chefs were held accountable and given long prison sentences. Santhe's security squads made several attempts on my master's life afterward, but we dealt with them. Much later we learned that Santhe's body had been placed in carbonite freeze, and that all his internal organs had been replaced by vat-grown ones. The surgical teams may even have been successful at restarting his body, but the Kerred Santhe they had known was irretrievable. Plagueis said nothing for a long moment, then continued. The circumstances will be different for you. You won't have the satisfaction of seeing our opponent die in person, because we want to ensure your deniability. A public assassination on Coruscant would be best for sending a message. Senator Pack's team, Sidious said in a raspy voice, tinged with residual anger. Plagueis shook his head. Team may yet prove useful. I'm referring to Senator Vidar Kim. His sentiments have made him a liability. More important, his death will allow us to position you where you've long yearned to be.